In Pocket Camp, as you play the game and get closer to campers, these cutscenes known as memories will unlock where you will watch little stories involving those characters. They were all specially written and meant to expand on specific characters because they all usually just use the same dialogue written for their personality type, and I thought that was really cool. It's a really cool and productive way to establish character details without the player's avatar actually being involved with the story, which is really good too because as a stand-in for the player, the avatar can't accurately behave the way the player would behave. All too often, I think of Animal Crossing characters as set pieces rather than as breathing characters. Stardew Valley comes to mind, a game made by a single person but still has so much depth and interesting characterization for its characters. Obviously, this would be a bit too tall of a task to apply to every single villager, but if we narrow it down to NPCs, Nintendo has already put the ghosts of these features into the game but failed to fully implement them. Think of Sable. As you get closer to her, she tells you things about herself that help establish character. She talks about and to other characters like Tom Nook and her sisters. This is a huge part of why Sable is one of my favorite characters because, well, she feels like a character. She has a story, you build a relationship with her. I think characters in Animal Crossing exist completely independent of each other too often. The Able sisters never mention Isabelle, Kix never mentions Tom Nook, and Leaf never mentions Digby. These are all characters living in the same town, right? They all work on the same street. Why don't they acknowledge each other? A huge focus in Animal Crossing's gameplay is relationships. That's why it's so absurd to me that none of the characters have relationships with one another. I can think of a few examples of characters acknowledging each other. Digby mentioning that Isabelle is his twin when you first introduce yourself to him. Isabelle describing herself as a fan of KK Slider when Club LOL is built. Leaf explaining that the Nooklings offered to host his shop in the store. But that's it. I think part of the fun of Animal Crossing is speculating on how characters might feel about each other, but why does the fun of that have to be limited to speculation? We have all of these characters that have interesting things to say and cute designs and things to sell, and you learn to care about them, but mostly it's through the player's own imaginings that makes them seem endearing. Why isn't Nintendo doing more to make these characters seem more like characters and less like props? Something that makes it seem like Nintendo is taking steps towards fixing this lack of characterization issue is the Welcome Amiibo update. Now, you can give your shopkeepers a day off and go hang out with them and learn more about them, but I had the same thing to say about Breath of the Wild's Champion's Ballad. If you have to pay for the good characterization, it's not good characterization. We should be able to learn about the character within the context of the base game without paying for DLC or buying Amiibo. If I was the director of Animal Crossing New Horizons, I would be making a plethora of new NPCs and shopkeepers. The reason I even had the idea to make this video was because I was making fan NPCs and thinking of how a story could be established using them. But the most important key of the new characters would be that they have meaningful relationships with one another. Maybe Franklin the Turkey has an apprentice who opens a restaurant on the island. Maybe Cyrus and Reese have a kid who's now friends with Leilani. The old characters can be stitched together and have meaningful relationships with each other too, but something special would be having characters that are integral to each other's stories. For all of Animal Crossing's focus on community, the characters sure don't seem to have one together. I had an idea for a Red Panda character named Yu, who's the estranged apprentice of Crazy Red who now creates their own original artworks and sells famous artwork, whose story is interwoven with a chef named Tomoe who moves to the island at the same time, and they each help each other find their own place in the world. I think it's a little silly that for all of the writing that goes into Animal Crossing, so little of it is spent on the characters that aren't just repeating stock dialogue. I have all of Isabelle's dialogue memorized. Digby had maybe 6 unique lines in the whole game. Tom Nook has his spiels about debt, but none of it tells you much about the characters themselves. None of it creates a sense of community with the characters, and I think that's a really big waste. I just can't help but think, if Concerned Ape, one person doing all of the writing, all of the art, all of the programming, and all of the story development for Stardew Valley can do it, why can't a multi-billion-dollar company do it? My idea for implementing something to fix this is the character events, similar to Stardew Valley. With Sable, they already sort of exist. The more you talk to the character, the more dialogue you unlock. Maybe the more you talk to the character, the more you learn about her, until you unlock a cutscene in your memory which you can see them interact with each other, and learn a bit more about them. You learn about Cyrus and Reese and learn how they fell in love through these memories. You get to see Tom Nook and Sable pursue a relationship together. You get to see Yu confront Crazy Red about his exploitation. It would be such a good and effective way to establish a cohesive story within the context of the game. Another thing that I think would be interesting is seeing the NPCs act more like villagers. When they finish out their workday, they go out and spend time in the town. Or maybe around lunchtime, they'll take a lunch break and sit outside on a bench. Just any sort of scenario where you can interact with them casually would be so good. What about you? Would you be interested in seeing a slightly more story-focused Animal Crossing game? Let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree, or if you have any other interesting ideas on how to improve the Animal Crossing series. Don't forget to check out my Instagram for my art too. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.